patience and taking my time and letting people see what I'm about and letting them know the first time I talk to with them that I'm not so all about the story, that I care about having a relationship and knowing who they are as people.
Welcome into another great week, another great conversation here on Cousins Conversations. And I have Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and ESPN now after their partnership together heading into this NFL season. And I almost messed up your name there, but I do know Jeff very well. Going back to my KU days, he came into my class as a senior and gave us some advice. And we've stuck around and been friends since then. So, Jeff, I appreciate you coming out with me here.
It's all good, man. And the name gets people all the time. So I tell people, don't feel bad about it. It definitely is a tricky one to pull off.
For sure. And I see you're out at training camps. You're out at the Chiefs training camp. This is always the fun time of the year. People are excited that football is finally getting going. What is the most exciting part of this part of the season for you going into the regular season and the preseason?
Well, I think as far as the Chiefs go, it really is a different offseason for them because you're coming off a 6-11 season. A lot of questions about Patrick Mahomes and how he's going to rebound from that ACL injury. A lot of new faces on defense. Andy Reid is getting older. He's in his late 60s now. And so you don't know what's going to happen with this team that's been so dominant for so long. And so that's really – I actually enjoy those kinds of off seasons because you really have – it gets boring when you're talking about teams that always win and are loaded and you expect them to go deep into the playoffs and play for championships. And now you got a different storyline in Kansas City. And will this team really be able to, overcome some of what they've had to deal with? And so the question around here, living in Kansas City, is really been all off season. Is this a team in decline, or is it a team that's just taken a 1-year hit and ready to get back into the mix and as far as the AFC power structure goes?
And Patrick Mahomes, his training has been well documented. We saw it in Quarterback on Netflix, and he posts a lot of videos on his social media about his crazy training routine. So I don't think anybody's surprised that he's come back and recovered from the injury that he had last year. But what have you seen from Mahomes and just what fascinates you about him and how he's back so early and healthy right now?
Well, one, I think we all expected him to work hard because that's the way he has been throughout his career. He attacks everything 100% energy and expectation of doing great things. So it wasn't a surprise that he got cleared to be ready for training camp. But on the first day of training camp, when he reported, he talked a lot about and opened up about some of the things that motivated him. And he talked about not being able to play with his kids and how hard that was for him, and being in the training room by himself at times and, trying to get through, and maybe sometimes being happy when another teammate walked in to do rehab, or, talking to Zach Ertz, the former tight end with the Commanders and the Eagles, who was going through his own ACL rehab, and having a little competition with him to see if they could keep each other motivated throughout the process. So you really got the human version of this, that he was certainly rocked by this in a lot of ways, had to deal with it in ways outside of football that he didn't expect. And some of the times with his children helped inspire him to get back and to play well. But also, he's also aware of this is just, even though he's been able to practice and do things in training camp, playing in a game with real players across from you who are trying to do you damage is a whole different thing. And so I think he's aware that that's the next step, being in those kind of situations and seeing how he responds to that.
Big offseason for Travis Kelce as well, marrying Taylor Swift. And there was a lot of talk, too. And I saw you asked this with Steve Smith to Andy Reid about the dad bod. Everyone's talking about Kelce's dad bod out there. So what do you see from Kelce going in? Because we know this will be his last season.
Well, I give him a break because I'm an older guy. So sometimes the body doesn't respond to all the training you want. No matter how finely tuned you are of an athlete, you're going to start putting on fat in places that you don't want. But what I do respect about Travis Kelce and what Andy Reid has said about him throughout training camp is that he's still a player that you got to pull him out of drills. Like when you want to give him a veteran day off, he wants to practice. When they want to pull him out of reps in drills, he wants to do all the reps. And so he still has that desire to be out there. And I fully do believe that he came back because he loves playing football and didn't like the way last year ended. But the reality also is that he's 37 years old. And while he still is doing things that most players at that position have not done in his career or throughout football history, he should not be the top option on this team. He led this team in receiving last year. He should be probably the third leading receiver, and it should be people like Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy or Cyrus Allen, Tyquan Thornton, who are getting more opportunities because he's not the kind of player who can take over the way he used to.
The Broncos and the Chargers caught up to the Chiefs a little bit last season. So what do you see as far as how this AFC West could play out this year?
I still feel that on paper, the Broncos and the Chargers are the better team. And I know the Broncos have been taking a whole bunch of hate and people are doubting them, but they still have a phenomenal defense. They still have a great offensive line. They made a huge trade for Jalen Waddle to add to a receiving core that I think is underrated. And if Bo Nix can stay healthy and progress, even though he's not a Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen level quarterback, he was a good enough quarterback to help them win 13 games and get to the AFC Championship game last year. So I think they will still be in the mix, especially with Sean Payton, who's won a championship as their head coach. And then what Jim Harbaugh has done with the Chargers in his first 2 years there, taking them to the playoffs both years, especially last year, losing Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, both starting tackles, and still being able to get into the playoffs. Justin Herbert took a ton of hits, and so I expect that to change with Mike McDaniel coming in as offensive coordinator and the run game getting a different mindset behind it. And I still think that the Chiefs, they're third. They could rise up, but their rising up depends a lot on a lot of young players playing well, and that's always a tough thing to really bet on in this league.
Super Bowl MVP is there as well in KC. How have you seen him fit into this offense? Because I know there was a lot of everyone was really surprised about that signing as coming right after the Super Bowl as well.
Yeah, well, it's if you watched their run game the last couple of years, they had to do something, and it was going to be drastic. I think they could have saved themselves a lot of money if they had used a draft pick last year on a player at that position because it would have saved them a ton. But look, Kenneth Walker showed that he can be a dynamic player last year, especially in clutch situations. And they may have overpaid for him, but he's a huge upgrade over Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. You're already seeing that in training camp with the way that he runs. A lot of explosiveness, a lot of speed, a lot of elusiveness, which they really need in the run game. And I would add Emmett Johnson, a rookie, Brashad Smith, a second-year player, and Amari DeMarcado, who came in as a free agent from Arizona into the mix too, because it's going to be a few guys involved in the run game, but they have to modernize this offense. And they've relied so much on run pass options, shotgun, throwing on first down, one of the highest teams as far as that goes in the league, that to be able to look more like what Sean McVay does, what Kyle Shanahan does, what Ben Johnson does, where the run game really fuels the pass game, that would help Patrick Mahomes a lot because now he's 31, about to be 31, going into the second half of his career. He needs more help. That's what the takeaway from last year should have been.
You mentioned Ben Johnson. Let's go over the NFC in Chicago here. I know a lot of the noise is loud because there's been so many injuries already. Before even the first preseason game, you had your biggest signing of the offseason, Kobe Bryant, out for the year. Yeah. Is there any way to prevent these injuries from happening? Because I know so many changes in the NFL happen because now you have less preseason games. There's a lot more emphasis on the joint practices. So is there any way to prevent these, maybe not be so intense in practice? Or what's your take?
It's hard. The league has changed so much, and the rules really have played a role in this because players can't do as much in the offseason as they used to do. They used to get away, and there used to be more of a concerted offseason program for the guys who stuck around. These soft tissue injuries you see happening are, the ACL tears, the Achilles tears. I don't think it's a coincidence that has something to do with, I think it has something to do with less formalized conditioning in the offseason for players. But it's also just the reality, just like it's a harder game. They're playing more games during the season. The offseason goes longer if you're able to get to the Super Bowl or play deep into the playoffs. And so if you're the Bears, you were playing football in late January, and so you don't get as much of a break. So I think that was, that's part of it as well. But I don't think there's any way to prevent it. I think that's just part of the game.
And part of that Kobe Bryant injury too, like there was some misreporting, which usually you don't really see happen. Like an insider has it and they say one thing and then the coach says the other thing. But it seems to happen more in the preseason and before the regular season starts. So how does that all work with like the sources and being incorrect sometimes or being, not what the team says.
Explain. I don't know what exactly happened. I didn't hear that part of the story. There was
So,
some inaccurate
so
reporting going on.
yeah. So one of the insiders said 8 to 10 weeks for Kobe Bryant
Oh,
injury, and then Ben Johnson came out and said no, it's more like
yeah,
you know four
yeah,
to
the
six
season. Yeah,
months.
yeah, the season.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so yeah, I don't know exactly how information got shared in that deal, and maybe that was initially someone got information that was at the front part of the diagnosis before more testing had been done, before doctors had gotten involved in it, which would not be surprising. There's such a rush to get information out that could be the case, and the rush to be first can prevent you sometimes from being really accurate. And so that really is probably what happened there. Someone got the information out early, and then Ben Johnson gave the really bad news later.
yeah. I know people were like, "Whoa, what happened?" Like
Yeah,
it was way worse
yeah,
than it and then
yeah,
turned out to be.
yeah. Well, think
Uh,
about this. I mean, think about Jordan Tyson, the receiver at the Saints, who pulled a hamstring or hurt his hamstring, and all of a sudden it's 2 months. He's gone. I'm just like, that was pretty quick. Like he just hurt it. Now he's out for 2 months.
yeah,
That's a rarity too. That kind of severity being the prognosis coming in that fast and that extreme.
yeah, crazy. How does that source game work though? Like when you're talking to sources or somebody, how do you work with them to get the right information out there?
Well, I think what you want to do is look. I really believe you shouldn't run anything unless that source you're talking to is the source. And so if you're talking about an injury or a trade or something like that, then you want a GM or a head coach telling you that. You don't want somebody who's on the periphery of that situation telling you that stuff. So that's the only way it's okay. And if you can't get that, then you need to get two sources. If that's an agent, that's another coach, a medical person, but you want at least one person, either one person who's really in the know or two people who can corroborate what you're hearing. And then from there, you can move forward. But if you, again, this game of insider and reporting has gotten so crazy now and so competitive that it's really hard to fight the urge to be first. And I always feel like from day one, I've always said it's better to be right than to be first. And sometimes you may not get the story and get the credit for that, but I'd much rather be the person, like you're saying, who's getting Kobe Bryant's injury right the first time than be the person come back and trying to explain why this is what they told me. Because you really it hurts your credibility at some point.
And if you're not hearing from a coach or a GM or maybe it's an agent or somebody over time, how does that relationship build enough to be comfortable to put out information like that?
Well, again, it's like you go back, and I think every move you make in this business, whether that leads to a big story or it's just, you're writing a feature on somebody or writing a column, whatever, you're always building relationships, and all you have is the name, on your back, the name you put in print, the name you put in the font, in front of you when you're on TV, and you have to always think about how your name's going to be affected by what you report, and so. I'd much rather, and I've had stories before with people who will say, I'm giving you this on background. If you get it from somebody else and confirm it, that's great. But I don't want to be the main source here. And I respect that. If I can't get it on, someone else to confirm it, I'll just eat the story. Or you try to write it in a way, present it in a way that you actually aren't hurting the source. But for the most part, I feel like people call you back and then give you stuff because they trust the way you operate. The way you get in trouble in this business with that is by, being wrong, floating rumors, wading in the territory that you're not really that knowledgeable about. And people remember that as well, too. So if you're consistent in what you do and you're consistently accurate and responsible in what you do, you'll get your share of stories.
How have you built that trust with people over years? Because you've been a writer across 3 different or 4 different media outlets now
Oh,
in your
yeah.
career.
Yeah.
So over time, how have you established that trust with people?
Yeah. I feel old saying that. By patience and taking my time and letting people see what I'm about and letting them know the first time I talk with them that I'm not so all about the story, that I care about having a relationship and knowing who they are as people. Sometimes just talking to people about their families, about their lives, about their day-to-day operations, and not hunting for information, that goes a long way because you want people to see who you are. And I think these guys in this business in sports, especially in the NFL, they're all hardwired to scrutinize people. And so they're looking at weaknesses, they're looking at strengths, they're looking at character, they're looking at body language, they're looking at confidence, they're looking at insecurity. And so you always want to present positive stuff that people, when they walk away from you, can feel like, oh, that was a good experience I had with that guy. So the next time they see you, oh, could I get your number? Next time after that, I call you. Could I get some information on this? Can you corroborate this? Or I'm hearing this. And it just builds from there. But, another thing I always tell people, especially young writers, because I teach a couple college classes, is that if you ask for 5 minutes, take 3. If you ask for 3 minutes, take 1. Like, always let people know, say thank you, I appreciate it. You'd be amazed at how much people don't, in my business, this business, don't treat people like people. They treat them like they're just tools to get what they want from, for their own personal gain.
That's definitely happened multiple times, no matter if you're a TV writer, things like that. You mentioned okay, 3 minutes to 1, 5 to 3. So do you always have a story going in, or do you actually you interview somebody and then it's like, oh, hey, this is another good story. So then you have multiple stories, or how does the story building work for you?
Generally, I like to know what I'm talking about going into it. I don't like fishing around for stories when I'm talking to somebody, because they pick up on that and they feel like you're wasting time. And so I always try to have an idea about what I want to talk about. And if they give me a sense that that's a bad way to go about it, and then I'll reverse course and try to find a different way to approach things or a different story to pursue. But ultimately, it's always good to go into any interaction with an athlete or a coach or an executive knowing what you want, because again, time is super valuable to them. And if you're able to be very strategic, very intentional, very cognizant of what you want to get, it helps them feel better about the experience, and also being prepared. And so I've been so many situations where I've seen younger writers not have a fact right and say it in an interview setting, and the person have to correct them. It happened to me a couple of weeks ago, and I was doing a story on the Raiders' 50th anniversary, and it was an innocent mistake, but I was talking to Dave Casper about playing for the 76 Raiders, their 50th anniversary team, and I had read, I was reading his bio, and I had seen 1974, and I had not realized when I saw it that that's when he got drafted. And I was thinking he got drafted in 71 when he started college at Notre Dame. And so when I was talking to him, I said, oh, you started with the Raiders in 71. He was like, I was drafted in 74. And I was like, I screwed up. Sorry, I read the bio wrong. But it's amazing how fast people, when you get things wrong, will correct you, and how much that can affect the conversation. And hopefully we got past that and he was cool about it. But there's times when that can derail an interview real fast.
How do you overcome those things? You just keep it going?
Well, you acknowledge why you made the
Yeah.
mistake.
Yeah.
So you want to at least explain, like, I'm not an idiot. I just had my facts wrong here, but I know that you did this. And then you try to give them opportunities you try to win back their trust quickly. And again, he was talking about a topic that he really was comfortable with. He didn't do a lot of interviews. Pretty bright guy, but I think he's not great talking about himself. But he was talking about a topic that he wanted to talk about. The first Super Bowl team of the Raiders. So he was able to get back into a proper mindset pretty quick.
When it comes to all the different outlets that you've worked for, you also were a college football player too. So you transitioning from being an athlete into media and a writer, and now in TV as well. How did that transition go for you? Kind of figuring out what you were going to do next.
Well, it was when I played football, I was really young. I was 18, 19 years old, and my career did not go very far because I had a couple knee injuries, a couple ACL injuries back in the late 80s. And so having one of those was really hurting your career. Having two was a death knell in a lot of ways. And so when I got done playing, I wanted to stay involved in sports because I enjoyed competing, and I didn't want to be a coach or a scout. And I just happened to, when I left Wyoming, where I was playing football, and transferred to Michigan, where I finished my degree, I got involved with a writing teacher there who thought I had some talent and really encouraged me to pursue it. I didn't know if you could make a living as a writer back then. I didn't follow the news in that way. But I took a chance, and he supported me. And I went through the process. I always tell people that when athletes stop playing, they don't realize how much of a transition that is, because you lose your identity real fast. And when you play sports and you're a high level player, you're given your identity. You don't really have to work at it. And so I saw Troy Vincent recently, who used to play in the league for a long time and is now director of football operations with the league, talking about always encouraging players to go get internships and take advantage of training, business training, whatever it is when they're playing. Because as he said, when you're a football player, when your classmates are taking internships, you're in the weight room. And when they're thinking about what they want to do after graduation, you're thinking about, how to learn cover two. And so you're falling behind the people you're going to compete with at some point in your life. And so I had to go through that transition myself, and it was depressing and it was hard, but eventually with the support of that teacher who became a really big mentor, I found my way in the newspapers, found my way into magazines, and I was able to build a career. But I'm glad it was hard when I went through it, but I'm glad I went through it.
How did you find that new identity through writing from that class and then now into what you're doing?
Well, what helped was that I think when I was an athlete, and I always am open about this, I wasn't the hardest worker in the world, which probably played into my injuries and not being able to handle those injuries well. And when I was done playing, I recognized just how important it was to really love what you're doing and to really throw yourself into what you're doing. And so when I became a writer, I was just 100% like all gas, no brakes about reading and learning and asking questions and trying to make the most of the opportunities I was given. And that helped me, because when I got an internship at the local paper, the Ann Arbor News, I took advantage of that. When I was able to, they made me a news reporter. I was covering police, so I became a really good police reporter. And, I learned from that experience. And then there was a guy named Jason Whitlock who was there covering the Fab Five at the University of Michigan basketball team at the time. And he left to go to Kansas City, and I got his job, and then I was able to take advantage of that. And I just realized that I wasn't going to waste opportunities again. And I wasn't going to be in a field where an injury could take away my ability to do my job. And so I was so focused and so into what I was doing after I got done playing football. And again, I was grateful that football taught me the importance of doing that.
As you climb the ladder to different places, you mentioned starting at Ann Arbor News, now you're NFL Network and ESPN. You worked at Sports Illustrated as well. How did you see the evolution of yourself as your print media career went on, as far as just continuing to improve and just having to continue to adapt as well?
Well, I just looked at it to be honest with you, when I was younger, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to do the best I could and keep working. I loved having a job that was similar to my college lifestyle, where you had some freedom and it wasn't a 9 to 5, didn't have to put on a suit to go to work. And I love that. You got to travel a little bit to other Big Ten towns. But I always remember early on in my career at the Ann Arbor News, an editor saying that journalism is what you do when you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. And it kind of hit me that there's a lot of people who just do that because it's a fun job, but it's not a job you're going to do forever. And so I thought, okay, I'll do this for a couple of years and I'll get a real job. And actually thought about taking the LSAT and applying to law school. And I was going to do that. And I ended up getting a call from a guy in San Francisco named Glenn Schwartz, who was the sports editor at the San Francisco Examiner. And he wanted to hire me for a job covering the Raiders. And it was 1996. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool, but I'm thinking about going to law school too. And so went out there, took the interview, went around San Francisco. It was gorgeous. I was like, it'd be cool to live here. And I came back, and the LSAT was going to be a couple of weeks off. And so I told myself, I had a roommate who was graduating from medical school, and I said I'm going to go to his party, and if I come home early and I'm responsible, I'll go take the LSAT and I'll go to law school. And if I stay out late, I'll just go to San Francisco. And then I got home at 5 o'clock in the morning, and next thing you know, I was covering the Raiders, 3 months later. And that's kind of how it started. And again, from there, it was fun. I was 25. I didn't know what I was doing. I broke some stories. I got some breaks that helped expand my profile. And then Sports Illustrated came calling 4 years later, and I got a job there. And then I was at ESPN 7 years after that. So my career took off pretty fast.
And now you're here doing TV, you're writing. So how have you just adapted to all the changes in media that we're seeing? Because it's now a digital world. I mean, we're here on a podcast talking. So how have you seen media change, and how have you kind of made changes or adapted to the changes that we've seen in media recently?
Well, it's changed. It's changed quickly. It's changed at like a hyper speed rate. And I've tried to tell friends of mine in the business that you have to always be willing to adjust and adapt to the new environment. And when I came out of college, there were so many jobs you could do. And if you just in newspapers, if you wanted to go work for the New York Times or the LA Times, or the Dallas Morning News, or Chicago Tribune, those places had great jobs. They had huge columnist jobs. They had huge national writing positions. If you wanted to be on TV, there were a zillion places you could go, and there was no internet. And so there was just a lot of comfort in the industry. And as that began to change in the late 90s, when the internet came around, you began to realize, okay, this is a different world we're entering into. And when I got to Sports Illustrated, I thought I'd be there for the rest of my career. And a year after I got there, and I have an AOL email for this reason, because a year after I got there, Time Warner and AOL merged. And there was this talk about new media and old media combining forces to create this superpower. And I realized real fast that when some of these things happen, they can go sideways. And that became one of the worst deals ever done. And it really hurt Time Warner. AOL got sideways, and they were laying people off the next year. And so I realized I had to start learning about TV just to survive. I was living in New York City. I got involved with a show called Cold Pizza, which is now First Take. Jim Rome called me to do some stuff on TV. And the next thing you know, I was, trying to learn that. And even when that happened, I kept looking around at what was happening with ESPN.com and Yahoo and all the other places that were doing a lot of stuff digitally. And okay, this is a new horizon as well. And so I've always tried to say, as Wayne Gretzky would say, where's the puck going? Don't go where it is, go where it's going. And that's always served me well. And I tell young kids that too, writers that I teach, like, always be willing to learn about something. You may not think you're ever going to use it. You may never use it, but it's good to have it in your tool bag when you're looking for work, because it makes you a lot more valuable these days.
What was your biggest realization about the TV side and the video side of things, coming from the writing background?
A couple of things. One, when I was a younger kid, I had a stutter, and so I had to get over that. I always felt like that was going to be a huge fear, that I was going to be exposed for, not being able to talk smoothly and have all the words right and not embarrass myself. So it really, in a lot of ways, was cathartic, being able to go through that process early on and make mistakes and get used to finding your voice and all that stuff. But two, I think being a writer, you realize the importance of economizing your words and really getting to the point fast and knowing how to tell a story. And even now, I still feel like I've been doing this on TV for like over 2 decades, and I feel like I'm really good at telling stories and articulating information in a brief way so I can make the most of it. And some people just talk forever, can't get to the point. There was a guy who brought me into ESPN who's now he's in charge of running the NFL Network, named Mike McQuaid. And I'll always remember I was doing some hits with a guy named Bob Glauber, who worked for Newsday back when we first started doing Cold Pizza. And Bob used to say to Mike, when Cold Pizza first started, we'd do these long segments and talk for 7-8 minutes, and we'd have all this time to get our points made. And now we're talking for like 30 minutes, and we're having to stop and go on to the next topic. And he's like, "What's that about?" And McQuaid, like, legendarily said, Bob, it's called TV. Like, no one's going to listen to you for like longer than 20 seconds anyway. So stop acting like 7 minutes, you're going to be able to hold people's attention. We're going to talk quickly, make our points succinctly, and we're going to move on to the next thing.
And a little bit of a full circle moment, like you're saying, because now NFL Network and ESPN are together. Do we have an idea of like what kind of things will look like going into the season with that partnership? Because we kind of seen some different things change, but is there anything that might be different, or people should expect with the differences?
Oh, it's a lot different for us on the NFL Network side. Like they had those layoffs like about 2 months into this thing happening, and we lost a lot of good people. And so that was a really tough week, talking to people and saying goodbye. And even now, there's so many people so many great people that ESPN has, and they do things in their own way. And we've been learning that and trying to figure out how to get acclimated. And I think it's going to take some time. To be to the point about this, it's that we're learning a lot, and they're figuring out who we are and where we fit. And this is a big year for ESPN in general because they have the Super Bowl on their network in February, and they've got a lot of resources dedicated to that. So it's about being patient and figuring out a lot of these things, and understanding that it's a good thing that we're here because it's ESPN's got a lot of resources and a lot of talent, a lot of creativity, and a lot of money, and that means a lot in this climate.
You specialize in the Chiefs, but what storylines? What's one big thing that you're looking at going into this year that people should think about?
Well, for me, I think it's just the overall the balance of the league. And I know the Rams have a super team that they've built, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think overall, what it really impressed me last year about this league is how much growth has happened, how much franchises have really understood the importance of getting the right coaches and making smart moves. And no disrespect to the Chiefs, but I think when they were winning and really they're dominating, it was, you look at their division, like they had, like every other team, the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Broncos probably had 4 or 5 coaches each over like a 10-year period. And Andy Reid was stable. Now you got Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh there. You look at, John Harbaugh and Dan Quinn in the NFC East, 2 guys who've been to a Super Bowl, 1 guy who's won a Super Bowl. You look at the guys like Ben Johnson, the Kyle Shanahans, and the Sean McVays, and the Mike McDonalds, and the Nick Siriannis, all these young guys who are, winning championships and getting the Super Bowls and changing the way football is played as far as schematically, offensively. And so it's exciting. It's an exciting time because you've got great players, you've got great coaches, and great balance. And so that means you don't know what's going to happen at the end of the year.
Yeah, you talked about balance, and there's also some new quarterbacks and new places. Like, as a Bears fan, I'm worried about the Vikings. I think Kyler Murray is just going to change a lot of things up there for them. And that's kind of become like the quarterback U for the NFL, that with Kevin O'Connell there too, because you see Sam Darnold, he's going to winning Super Bowls now at his next stop. So what do you think about, these new teams with, or not new teams, but quarterbacks with new teams?
Well, I think that's a place that's definitely going to be worth watching as the season progresses. I hear what you're saying about Kyler Murray and the potential, but there's also a lot of questions about whether he can succeed in this offense because it's not what he's been used to doing, and it's not the kind of quarterback that Kevin O'Connell's been used to having. And so like on the plus side, Murray's got the improvisational skills, and he's obviously very experienced, and he's been up in the playoffs. Things J.J. McCarthy has not done. But the flip side of it, he's also been accused of being lazy and not really focused and not in the playbook in the way he needs to be. And so it's going to be an interesting marriage, but there's so much talent there. And, from the receiving core to the offensive line to the defense with Brian Flores, that you have to assume, like, they weren't a 4-13 team last year. They were 9-8. And so I'm sure they expect to get back into the playoff hunt pretty fast this year.
Lots to look forward to as the season gets rolling here. What are the next couple of weeks looking like for you as we get into the regular season?
Oh, a lot more trying to figure out what we're going to do. That's what's looking like. We just had a meeting yesterday where we met some of our supervisors, and I had a call with with one of the ESPN.com editors before I got on with you. I have another call with the ESPN.com VP of Digital tomorrow, and I'll be talking to another producer later tomorrow is on Friday. And so there's a lot of calls coming my way. So hopefully by the end of the next couple of weeks, I'll have a clearer idea what I'm going to be doing this fall.
Well, either way, we look forward to seeing you out there. We already saw you at Chiefs training camp. Those were some fun segments that you did there. Before we go, I ask, what is one thing that you would want to tell people who want to be national writers or write a professional sports league, write stories, cover stories, report? What would be the biggest advice? And I know you give good advice because you told it to our class all those years ago. So
yeah. I would say learn as much as you can at this point in your life. If you're just starting out, learn about production, learn about writing, learn about being in front of the camera, learn about podcasting, start a YouTube channel, write a blog. I sound old saying this, but when I was coming up, you had to have people open doors for you, and you had to really hope they saw something in you. And now you have the opportunity to create your own, resume and that people can see all over the place. And you're seeing people get opportunities because of that. And so the reps that used to be handed out to people, you can create them on your own. And so I would definitely be very open to trying new things, and then also seek people out who are doing what you want to do. I remember writing a letter to Michael Wilbon when I was a young writer, and he wrote me back when he was at the Washington Post. It meant everything that he would take the time to get back to me and give me some advice. And so I think people in my position always love giving back. And so don't think that can happen if you want their feedback from those people as well.
Chicago legend, PTI legend. Love watching Mike Wilbon. For people that are here for the first time, they're seeing you. Where can they follow your work at?
On ESPN, ESPN.com. Eventually, hopefully, NFL Network. The Insiders, a show I do a lot. I've done some Good Morning Football more lately. Obviously, I'm on Twitter. Jeffrey Chadiha. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. And so if you want to follow me, just hit me up and I'll put you in the family, and we'll go from there.
That sounds great. Yeah, make sure you go watch him on NFL Network, on ESPN, all his writing online. And if you enjoyed this conversation as well, subscribe to the YouTube channel here, Cousins Conversations, for awesome guests every week, just like Jeff here. And Jeff, I appreciate you hanging out with me here on Cousins Conversations.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it, Nick.
All right. Have a great week, everybody.